Busing on the Lookout exists to educate and equip all members of the bus industry with the information necessary to enable them to combat human trafficking as a part of their everyday jobs. Human traffickers are counting on people not paying attention and not knowing the signs to look for or the questions to ask. If every school transportation employee could be trained to identify the signs of human trafficking and how to report it effectively, imagine how many victims could be recovered and potentially how many traffickers could be arrested. For more information on Busing on the Lookout, you can contact the Office of School Safety and Security by either phone or email, or visit our page at the Department of Education website.
Hello, my name is Cindy Swearengin with the Office of School Safety and Security, and we'd like to welcome you to the kickoff webinar for our 2022-23 school year. Today, we're going to be having Lexi Higgins, which is a national speaker from the Truckers Against Trafficking. And more specifically, her program is called BOTL, which is Busing on the Lookout. So we're super excited about this. We know human trafficking is a hard subject, but we know it's a subject that we all need to have information on. So without further ado, I would like to introduce to you Lexi Higgins with Truckers Against Trafficking.
So my name is Lexi Higgins. I am the Deputy Director for Busing on the Lookout, which is a program of an organization called Truckers Against Trafficking. TAT has been working with the transportation industry for over a decade now to educate, equip, and mobilize its members to combat human trafficking in the course of their everyday jobs. And we started working specifically with truckers for two reasons, right? First, there are millions of them across the United States and North America. They are basically a mobile army that is primed and ready to go across the entire country. And then second, because they are likely to be in the places where sex trafficking is happening in the United States. So rest stops, truck stops, hotels, motels, roadside restaurants. These are all places that trafficking happens and all places that truckers are visiting in the course of their normal duties on the job. So they have a high likelihood of coming across potential cases of human trafficking, and with the right training are able to recognize that and report it. So we've seen so far over 1.3 million members of the transportation industry receiving anti-trafficking training through TAT and our programs. And since we launched, thousands of victims have been recovered by members of the transportation industry.
What is your program BOTL, Busing on the Lookout, and how does it apply to schools?
So Busing on the Lookout, or BOTL as we like to call it, is TAT's program for the bus industry. We launched it in 2018, really in recognition of the fact that all of the principles that led us to start working with the trucking industry around this issue also hold true for the bus industry, right? There are so many members of the bus industry, although it's a slightly smaller industry than the trucking industry. They are placed throughout the roads of our country. And possibly even a more strategic group to be talking to about trafficking, because the bus industry, bus drivers and others are interacting with passengers on a daily basis and have that potential to be able to recognize trafficking that might be going on in the course of their everyday jobs. So we work with all sectors of the bus industry: motor coach, transit, tours and charters, and school transportation. And often when I say school transportation, that connection is not immediately clear to everyone about why school transportation would need to be involved in the issue of human trafficking. You know, why would school bus drivers need to know about human trafficking? But we actually know that child victims of human trafficking, and especially sex trafficking, will often continue attending school during the day while they are being trafficked and exploited behind the scenes on nights, weekends, and breaks. We know that, you know, in over 40% of child sex trafficking cases, there's some family member involvement. So those children are being trafficked out of their own home while they are still attending school, maybe participating in after school activities, and living on the surface what could look like a completely normal life while this is happening behind the scenes. So that's really why we have included in our mission to recruit school transportation as an ally in working on this issue, and hopefully doing something about it to help keep kids safe as they are going through their everyday lives.
Why is this important to schools?
So, school is a safe place. And for some kids, it might be the only safe place that they have. So, in our training video for school transportation, for example, Liz, a survivor of child sex trafficking, shares that she used to sleep in the library at school because it wasn't safe for her to sleep at home, or at night when she was supposed to be sleeping, she had men in her bedroom with her. And so she found school to be her only safe place. And that can be true for a lot of child victims. So the school ecosystem offers so many opportunities to interact with children and get to know them and possibly notice signs of exploitation or grooming or abuse. And so making sure that the adults in that ecosystem have the language and the tools and the information that they need to be able to recognize those signs and know what to do about it is incredibly important. And so we at BOTL really believe that educators, and I use that term very broadly, not just teachers, but anyone involved in the education ecosystem, that includes guidance counselors, coaches, bus drivers, we think it's really important that they have the information that they need and the tools that they need to be able to help keep the kids safe that they care about so much, that they're seeing on an everyday basis.
Why do schools need training on human trafficking awareness?
Because of the grooming process that traffickers use to create a relationship and a bond with their victims, children experiencing exploitation or trafficking are rarely going to self identify as victims or come out and directly ask for help. We also know that the online component of this issue, of this crime, is increasing and probably only going to continue to increase as we move towards, this more and more digital and virtual world. And so that means that the actual interactions, the trafficker approaching the potential victim, the interaction between the trafficker and a potential buyer, those things are not happening out in public where anyone can observe it. It's happening online, where people aren't able to observe those interactions. And so being able to recognize the signs of what might be going on behind the scenes, right? Training those safe adults on this issue and how to recognize the behaviors, the actions, the language that a victim might display that could indicate that this is going on behind the scenes, that this is going on online, that this is going on at home, is so important, because that victim is not more than likely going to be able to ask for help directly on their own. Creating those systems, creating those safe adults that can recognize those signs and do something about it to help keep those kids safe is really crucial.
What can schools do to support awareness of human trafficking and reporting?
So the most important thing to remember when it comes to reporting human trafficking within the school system is that this is a form of child abuse. So the most important thing is to know your school protocols and your state mandated reporting laws when it comes to child abuse. In Oklahoma, any person that believes that a child is being abused or neglected is mandated by law to report that suspected abuse to Department of Human Services. And so every school should already have protocols on how to report that suspected child abuse, and really making sure that anyone that is getting human trafficking training is also getting that information on how to report, right? If we are training them on how to recognize the signs, we need to make sure that they know what to do if they are suspecting that something is going on. And so definitely making sure that we are including information about those reporting protocols. In an ideal world, every school would also have these protocols specifically for suspected trafficking, because we know that the needs of these victims are very specific and the response is very specific, in order to get them the help that they need. That is a growing practice, although I don't think a ton of schools already have those protocols in place, but certainly if they do, that's something to research and share in this training process. There are also some really great resources around human trafficking specific protocols from the US Department of Education. They have a resource called Human Trafficking in America's Schools, that has some great information if that's something that you're interested in looking more into around that human trafficking specific protocols, for reporting suspicions of that within the school ecosystem. So that's something that I always like to lift up, is making sure that we are sharing that information alongside, what are the signs to look out for? What does this issue look like? What do you do if you are seeing this, and making sure that all of our educators know exactly what they should do if they're suspecting this, and that it's a safe space to report suspicions, that it's okay to be wrong, and better to report something that doesn't feel quite right and be wrong than to not report something that really is, exploitation happening.
What are some signs of human trafficking we might see in a school setting?
So some of the signs that you might see in the school setting that could indicate potential human trafficking. It might be a student who has begun to accumulate frequent absences, or who are absent for days at a time, go away, come back without really an explanation about where they were. It could be new or different people dropping or picking that student up at the bus stop or at school. That would often be maybe an older person, an older man. Lots of different men picking someone up could be a red flag as well. Any signs of course, physical abuse, bruises, malnourishment, neglect can be signs of trafficking, can be a red flag that this needs to be looked into more. If they are dressed inappropriately, either inappropriately in terms of dressing more sexualized than they should be for school or for their age, or also just being dressed inappropriately for the weather, right? If they have a big bulky sweater on, trying to cover something up maybe in 80-degree heat during the summer, that's probably something indicating that something isn't quite right. There could be markings or tattoos that could be a trafficker's branding. Oftentimes, traffickers will brand their victims with perhaps their name or a dollar sign or a barcode. Those can all be common tattoos and branding of a trafficker. It could be students who are in that grooming process with a trafficker, where that trafficker is really trying to create the relationship with them before the exploitation starts. And so in that process, they will often give their potential victim gifts. So a student who maybe is showing up with the latest gadgets, the newest phone, has new clothes, new shoes, has their nails done or their hair done, those could all be, and they don't really have an explanation for where those came from. Those could be gifts that a trafficker is giving to that student during that grooming process, trying to gain their trust and affection. And then, any mention, I know in the school setting, definitely on the school bus, we know that that's where a lot of the gossip happens, right? That's where kids are talking to their friends. So any mention that a student maybe has a pimp, a sugar daddy, even an older boyfriend, has formed a relationship with someone online, any mention that they're making a quota, that's all language that can be related to trafficking and could be a red flag to look into. And I always, when I share these red flags, like to say, a trafficking case might not have every single one of these red flags. One of these red flags alone might not mean trafficking, but it's really about being able to sort of notice these signs in the kids that you already know that you're seeing on a daily basis. If something doesn't feel quite right, if a few of these signs are popping up, It's a good indicator that maybe someone should be asking a few more questions and making sure that that kid's okay.
Do you have any examples of human trafficking in a school setting?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one example that I can real life example that I can share with you, our training video for school transportation features a survivor of familial trafficking named Liz. She's actually a staff member at Trackers Against Trafficking. She works with us full time. And in the video, she shares her experience of being trafficked by her mother from the age of 6 until she was 18 and went away to college. And she rode the school bus every day. She went to ballet class. She did really well in school because that was her safe space. But behind the scenes, she was actually being sold for sex out of her own bedroom. And so in the video, Liz shares her memories of going to school and how it was really her safe space. She shares her memories of her school bus driver, who was named Mr. B, and she knew that he was, that he cared about her. She knew that he was a safe adult. And she thinks that he probably noticed some strange things that didn't quite seem right. Like, he definitely noticed men picking her up at the school bus stop in the afternoon, different men. She says she can remember a time that condoms fell out of her purse on the bus, and she just kind of tried to put them back in quickly and ignore the fact that it had happened. She says he tried to ask her some questions about her big baggy clothes that she wore all the time, that she was wearing to cover bruises and sort of hide her body. But he didn't know what to do with that information or how to help her. And so, because he didn't have proper training on trafficking or who he could possibly report something like this to, nothing ever happened. But she has these fond memories of her school bus driver as someone that she knows cared about her, that treated her with kindness and respect when she wasn't getting a lot of that in other places. So that's one real life example. We definitely have talked to other survivors who have been trafficked by family members, survivors who have been trafficked by who they thought was their boyfriend, an older boyfriend, who coerced them into these situations, and have definitely talked to many victims who continued going to school while they were being trafficked behind the scenes.
What other groups than just school route bus drivers could benefit from bottle training?
So on the school side, really everyone should be trained on human trafficking. Anyone that's interacting with children on a daily basis can benefit from training on the issue. And I would say, even though our bottles school transportation training is geared towards the transportation piece of the school ecosystem, it can actually be useful for anyone in the school setting. And on the transportation side, we definitely encourage all school transportation staff to get trained. So it's not just the school bus driver, it includes the dispatch, the aides, the monitors, the crossing guards, drivers who provide transportation for after school activities. So even if they're not driving the school bus to and from school on the regular basis, anyone that is providing that transportation for sports and that sort of thing can also really benefit from this. Sometimes that's coaches and teachers who are also providing that transportation. Our school transportation training can really be relevant for any of those groups. And then we at Bottle also have training for transit and motor coach. So these days, I know school transportation is working more and more closely with local transit in many places to help get kids to and from school. And so transit agencies that are working with schools could definitely benefit from the Bottle materials as well.
What is the cost of the program?
So we provide all of our training materials free of charge. Most of them are available in both English and Spanish. And our mission is really just to saturate the industry with this information. So we want to get it out there in any way that we can. You can reach out to me directly and I can send you all of the materials, including our training video on a DVD or as a link to download a copy of the video. We have a lot of supplemental materials as well. So we have wallet cards, we have dash stickers, We have additional flyers, and we have an app as well. So lots of great information available. We have posters that can go up in break rooms or offices. And again, we can provide all of those materials free of charge. So it's really just a matter of reaching out. And I can get those materials on their way to you. They're really meant to be plug and play. So your trainer does not have to be the expert on the issue. They can plug in the video and provide, the supplemental materials, and that will give your trainees the information that they need. We also recently added our school transportation training to our online learning portal. And so individuals can access the training there. They can go on our portal, they do a short registration, watch the training video, complete a short quiz. And once you have passed that quiz, you get a certificate showing that you've completed the training. So it's available there as well. That's a great access point. And again, we, just think it's so important for the bus industry and for school transportation to have this information, have the language and tools. And so are always welcome any kind of conversation around materials that you would like to see, information, and how we can best integrate this information into your existing training systems. That's something that we are always open to working with anyone on, in terms of adding this to online learning systems, creating additional resources where you're seeing a gap in information. Happy to have those conversations as well.
Any last words?
This is a tough topic to talk about. I know it's a pretty dark topic, and something that people don't really like to think about, that it could be happening in their backyard, that it could be happening in their school. Unfortunately, the reality is that it could be happening in anyone's school. But on the bright side, on the hopeful side, sort of trying to finish off with a hopeful note, the opportunity here is that those in the school setting have a real potential to make a difference on this issue, and to be able to do something about it with the proper training. We can keep our kids safe. We can help protect kids from exploitation, and educators, people in the school setting, have such potential to be able to play a role in keeping kids safe from exploitation. And so I would just encourage everyone to get informed, to reach out if you would like our training materials, and to spread the word, share this information with anyone in your school setting, anyone in your life that you think needs to know about this, because we really can all play a role in keeping kids safe and protecting kids from trafficking and exploitation.
Thank you, Lexi, for that great program on Busing on the Lookout. And we know that human trafficking awareness is not just for bus drivers, but it's for everybody. And so thank you for those of you who tuned in to watch this webinar. And we hope to see you next month. And remember, our Awareness to Action webinar is the third Thursday of each month. And we look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you.